Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving straight into a topic that every single nurse practitioner wrestles with, untangling the messy, often super blurry lines between healthcare ethics and medical law. Everyday practice isn't just about checking boxes on a chart, it's this constant high-stakes balancing act between doing what you feel is morally right and strictly following the rulebook. Picture this. You're driving home, completely exhausted from a grueling 12-hour shift, and you suddenly see a roadside accident. The ethical part of your brain is literally screaming at you to stop and help. But the legal side hesitates. Do you intervene and risk potential legal liability, or do you just keep driving and risk the heavy, heavy burden of your own conscience? It's a massive dilemma. So here's our roadmap for the Explainer today. First, we'll tackle ethics versus the law. Second, the ethical compass. Third, real-world dilemmas. Fourth, analyzing ethical choices. And fifth, your legal scope of practice. Let's get into it. All right, let's kick things off right at the foundation with Section 1, Ethics versus the Law, Finding the Balance. Now, ethics and the law definitely overlap, but they are absolutely not the same thing. Ethics is essentially a philosophy about what is good. But here's the catch. There is no earthly referee. Two brilliant clinicians can look at the exact same situation and reach totally different ethical conclusions. The law, on the other hand, is made by legislatures and courts. It tries to lay down strict black and white rules about what is prohibited. But as we all know, just like ethics, the law still manages to fall into these incredibly frustrating gray areas all the time. Moving right along to Section 2, the ethical compass and your guiding principles. It's pretty wild to think about, but modern medical ethics is fundamentally anchored in ancient wisdom. Hippocrates basically nailed it all the way back in 370 BC. This famous directive of his remains the absolute bedrock of clinical practice today. Every single time you write an order or give medical advice, this simple phrase, to help, or at least to do no harm, is your guiding light. Academics love to categorize things, right? So they took that ancient wisdom and broke biomedical ethics down into 5 core pillars, giving us a really solid everyday framework. First up is beneficence, which means you're affirmatively acting to benefit others, sometimes even going beyond what the law requires. Then there's non-maleficence, the strict obligation to not inflict harm. Justice is all about treating people fairly. Fidelity, well, that's really just about loyalty, being truthful and keeping your promises to your patients. And finally, respect for autonomy. This is huge. It acknowledges a patient's ultimate right to make their own choices based on their own personal values, even if you disagree with them. Which brings us perfectly to Section 3, Real-World Dilemmas and Your Daily Challenges. This is where the rubber meets the road, because those 5 pillars are tested constantly on the floor. Think about the gut-wrenching feeling of deciding whether to disclose to a patient that a mistake was made in their care, or debating the justice of a situation where a patient's lack of insurance might actually determine if you can provide a crucial service. Even something like nudging a patient toward a clinical research study. Is it truly in their best interest, or is there a conflict there? Or how about this one? A pharma rep offers you a free, nice dinner. It seems harmless, but does it skew your objectivity? That's a classic conflict of fidelity and justice. And then there are the truly heart-wrenching moments, like when a distressed family literally begs you not to tell a patient their terminal diagnosis. That pits the family's wishes directly against the patient's right to autonomy, or the incredibly heavy burden of deciding when it's time to stop curative treatments altogether. The point I want to drive home is that these aren't just hypotheticals in some textbook. It's the very real struggle of, say, knowing your patient's chosen surgeon is known for being incompetent and agonizing over whether you should step in. It's figuring out how to ethically transition your patients when you move to a new practice. These are heavy, daily realities that NPs face all the time. So, how do we handle this without totally burning out? Let's look at Section 4, Analyzing Ethical Choices, Making the Right Call. Basically, every single time you make a call or choose not to act, you're juggling 4 competing forces. You are weighing the very real, terrifying legal fear of a malpractice lawsuit against the fear of a patient abandonment charge. At the exact same time, you have to balance the practical, real-world need to get paid for your work with your own deeply held personal values. All 4 of these forces are pulling at you simultaneously, 25% across the board. Let's circle back to that roadside accident from earlier. You can't just freeze up in that moment. You have to rapid fire through some very specific questions. Are others already on the scene helping? Are my specific skills actually going to add value here?
Do I even have the legal authority to treat someone on the side of a highway? And then you have to look inward. If I drive by, am I going to be able to live with myself? If I was the one lying on the pavement, would I want the passing NP to stop?
Thankfully, there's a framework to keep you from spinning out when things get chaotic. It's a simple 3-step lifeline. Step 1, gather your information. What's the law here? Who is getting hurt? What is your gut telling you? Step 2, structure a plan. Lay out your options and weigh the pros and cons. Actually, scratch that. Make sure you look for alternative approaches too, not just your first instinct. And step 3, make the decision. Consult your codes of conduct, talk it through with the patient if applicable, make the call, and, this is crucial, learn from any mistakes you make along the way. And that brings us to our final stop today, Section 5, Legal Scope of Practice, Knowing the Boundaries. To really know where the legal lines are drawn, we have to rely on the heavy hitters. Authoritative guideposts, like Carolyn Buppert's Legal Guide, are absolutely essential because they dictate exactly what a nurse practitioner is and isn't allowed to do. Why does this legal description actually matter so much? Well, for starters, it allows you to practice at the full extent of your education and training. Defensively, it's what protects you from severe criminal charges, like practicing medicine without a license. It also ensures you aren't passing the buck and imputing liability onto someone else. It places the accountability squarely and professionally on your shoulders. The American Association of Nurse Practitioners is super clear about this. You are not merely a physician extender. You are a licensed, independent practitioner in your own right. You are the expert assessing, diagnosing, and managing illnesses. But here's the tricky part. How that independence plays out legally depends entirely on the state you practice in. Some states use a statutory scope, where the state legislature writes specific laws. These can be crystal clear, or they can be frustratingly vague. Sometimes they're not even defined at all. Other states use a regulatory scope, where they hand the rulemaking authority over to the State Board of Nursing. But listen, whether it's a statute or a regulation, both carry the exact same force of law. You absolutely must know which system your specific state operates under. As we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with a question to chew on. Next time you step into the clinic or drive past an accident on your way home, how will you navigate that gray space? When the law is murky and the ethical burden feels incredibly heavy, how are you going to balance your moral desire to do no harm with your strict legal liability to follow the rules? Keep your ethical compass calibrated, know your legal scope inside and out, and walk that line with confidence. Thanks for joining me.